So
Nice.
essentially it's like this turf area outside behind my office, and it's 24/7 access. They can go there, they can work out. But then there's this old carriage house. This building's like 120 years old, and I think they used to store actual carriages back there. But it's been converted, it's got an AC unit. That's where we put the cold forge. We have the red
Okay, yeah, I've seen that on your
we
social. So that's awesome.
yeah, it's fun. We have like a EWAT system, and then outside we have the traditional barrel sauna, and they can come there whenever they want.
Cool. Love that.
Yeah, it's nice because people can get better just by doing that. The cold has substantial pain management capacity. You know,
Mhm.
with arthritis, herniated discs, these sort of aches and pains, you get into the cold plunge, and it's quite effective, more powerful than certain pharmaceuticals even.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm hoping to gather enough case studies on it, and then I'm going to publish it at some point, do like a retrospective practice audit,
That's
publish that,
awesome.
maybe do some
Yeah.
lectures.
Love that.
Yeah.
It's definitely something I think it's getting more well known with like Huberman talking about it a lot. And but still just like finding places to do it, I think is probably biggest challenge. Like I don't know of a place in my city. I haven't researched a ton, but that just offers cold plunge. Like we have saunas, we have red light therapy, but people will do it at home. It's just if gyms had it just there for you, that would be so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we have cold weather, so then we're like, we don't want to get cold in the winter.
It's so cold where you live.
Different.
So I'm going to write in the chat here for everyone to ask questions, please.
Hey, I go to Perspire in West Des Moines for sauna.
Oh, okay, Perspire makes sense.
Yes, and I've talked to their owner guy, and obviously this is only for people local to me, but Kate, if you do go, they will give discounts if you are my friend or my client.
So you're involved in the nutrition or dietitian part of the GLP-1 peptide counseling. Is that right?
Yes, with a local business that's doing that.
Good.
I started doing that a couple months ago, more like summer, but I've gotten more involved recently.
Good. Yeah, we've used the GLP-1 peptides here. I always recommend now for a standard before I prescribe these things is people need to get DEXA body composition scans done. They gotta,
Yep. And we do have that and recommend it, but still just like learning how to often to monitor that is
I'd say every 3 months.
every 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I would say even more if you can every month, but
that would be nice. But
like,
3 months and see if the body composition change is happening in the way you'd want it to go.
yeah.
I had a guy, he was ranting tirzepatide for a time and he did lose weight. I mean, he said he lost about 20 or 16 pounds. But then when we did it, he ended up losing about 8 pounds of muscle and only like 2 pounds of fat. And it wasn't quite what we would be hoping for with that.
Yeah. hmm
So that was out. I was like, well, not doing that anymore. I'm gonna try this a different way.
Yep.
The
I
other
definitely
interesting
did.
component of that is the insulin secretion. I can't really wrap my brain around that because typically we want a low fasting insulin level, but if you've ever measured insulin levels on someone on Ozempic, their insulin shoots up, right? Because it stimulates insulin release, so their insulin goes up to like 60, right? Yeah, it goes super high.
Did not know that. I've been wanting to have a client who would be willing to monitor it more closely, but I have not yet.
It's crazy. You'll see this insulin level. I saw it once at like 80. I was like, oh my god, what is this? And yeah, they were on the GLP-1 Ozempic. But yeah, I'm trying to wrap my brain around that because
Insulin resistance. I mean, there's plenty of studies on that,
yeah,
especially with COS. There's some good studies on that.
yeah, the high insulin in the PCOS.
Mhm.
They'll have it typically around 16, 18. They're just sitting fasting at an 18 of insulin all the time. So they're insulin resistant. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, how insulin is used for fat gain and fat loss in this case. This is a very interesting subject. How to make insulin work for you.
Yeah, how to make it work for you. Well,
Yes.
I mean, the first thing is keeping and gaining your muscle mass,
Yeah.
which requires the training, but also the food, protein intake. Fasting I'm learning more about how women can use some fasting, so I definitely want to chat about that a little bit. Can lower insulin, but can be tricky too if we overdo it with fasting. But yeah, I mean, essentially, insulin allows your cells to take in the glucose. So if it's rising, that means your cells are not responding to the insulin as well, which is not good. So we want it to stay pretty low. Or we want at least to monitor the trends. Because what do you use for optimal insulin?
So it's very interesting. If I have an athlete, they're super healthy, and their insulin level is, say for mine's like 2.5. That's pretty much where my insulin level averages. And then my blood sugar is also very good, right? I do a fasting test, my blood sugar is maybe 90, right? So I got low insulin, I got low blood sugar. That's good. Now, there's another sort of phenomenon. I saw this yesterday. This lady, she had a blood sugar of 110, and her insulin was 2.2, 2.4. So this is a little bit concerning because she's not secreting insulin in response to a high blood sugar, but she was also on a fasting test and she had high blood sugar and no insulin response. When you see that, you have to wonder, well, maybe they don't produce enough insulin. And that's another problem.
Burning out. Is it beta cell burnout?
Beta cell burnout. Yeah.
That's why I think is always important.
My concern is when you have someone who has high fasting insulin over many years, so you test them, their insulin's 16, their insulin's 20. This goes on for many, many years. They will burn out their pancreas, and their pancreas will not be able to eventually secrete insulin appropriately.
Yeah, it doesn't keep up. And then the blood sugar piles up.
Yeah, and then they need insulin injections. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also vitamins and minerals that impact insulin. I mean, you can't really pinpoint just one, but I think that's where if you look at everything someone's eating, but also look at their blood and cellular levels of that, chromium, inositol, B vitamins, all can play into that.
I had a case I saw today. She had an insulin level of 25 and her blood sugar was 150. So this is an older woman. She doesn't work out. And she's on metformin. She's on glipizide. And she's like, why isn't it lower? I'm taking it all twice daily. And it's like, well, you don't work out. You are insulin resistant. The body doesn't know what to do with sugar or insulin because you don't have muscle mass. You don't train.
Yep. And I've seen similar of people on different medications, even on a GLP-1 and metformin, and they're not eating at all, but their blood sugars are staying high because of the stress. Their body is stressed.
Yeah.
So
I don't see that very often because of the nature of my practice, but that goes on all day long in regular primary care. I remember seeing that, and I remember like, I don't want to deal with that. That's just, you're juggling all these medications and all these side effects, and the blood sugar is still not controlled, and you got problems associated with uncontrolled diabetes. It's a mess. And it can all be fixed with exercise and growing muscle. Well, thus we have the muscle-centric medicine approach at Iron DPC. We try to get people to train.
Do you work with at-home workouts at all for beginners?
I'm trying to recommend resistance bands to people like the X3 system because it's an at-home system that people can use.
Okay. Yeah. Is it like it's just bands or is it
There's a base plate and bands.
Okay.
Like a bar, base plate, bands. You can do all body, all muscle groups.
I haven't trained a lot with bands, but I've like trained people with them, but I usually go to body weight and dumbbells first, but bands are great too. Anything to consistently do the same movement every week is what I'm always telling people, because everyone wants to just do different videos every single week. It seems like different classes. It's better to just do the same training each week, build upon that is what I'm.
Yeah,
doing.
progressive overload. I like the bands as well because it's low impact on their joints.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Agreed.
So,
We need some questions.
are we having any questions yet? No, no one's written any yet. Oh, here's one.
Go.
Oh, yeah, Scott had a couple questions.
Fasting.
Go.
Sorry, guys. I might have to just turn away for a second to take like another conference, but I've been waiting to ask these questions all week, so
Yeah.
I'm behind the scenes looking.
Okay. So
Thanks.
I'll pose the first question for Kelli here.
Yeah.
How important is intermittent fasting? If I'm trying to hit a protein target of, say, 180 grams per
Mhm.
day, it's much easier if I eat upon wake up at 6:30 or so instead of waiting to get my first meal in by 11. Okay, so the good old, is intermittent fasting useful for, someone? What do you think? What's your take?
So I think you need to like ease into it. And so 6:30 versus 11, that's a pretty big difference. You could maybe try to start at like eating at, I know maybe with work schedule, this isn't possible, but I usually say first try to get all your nutrients in, then think about timing. So I would say like if you're just really not able to get that, then maybe don't do the fasting, or maybe do it like 2 to 3 days a week and find somewhere kind of in between. I don't usually jump straight to fasting, but I know for certain conditions, autoimmune conditions sometimes, or like if you truly, truly do have weight loss resistance, then I would look to it. But oftentimes it's not really weight loss resistance. We just need to try other things first. And if you are waking up a lot in the middle of the night, very hungry, then I would be concerned that maybe you're just not getting enough of some essential nutrients. You could also try kind of a fasting mimicking, like just low carb in the morning, or definitely low carb in the morning for most people is fine. But if you like need a snack at night, you could do like something with mostly fat and protein. So you're not spiking that blood sugar insulin in the evening. But it does depend, like what is your goal? What is your age? What is your, even gender? So yeah, did that answer? Stefan, do you have things to add?
I'll answer. I'll give my ideas too. So I use fasting for very specific reasons at Iron DPC. For example, if we have someone who has fat on their liver and we want them to clean up some fat on their liver, or maybe they have some extra triglycerides sitting around, we put them through a specific 3 to 5 day fast. And we can do fasting mimicking diets like the Prolon fasting mimicking diet, right? And that will clean it up very quickly. Or you can do an electrolyte water fast for 3 days, 4 days. It cleans that up very quickly. So I'll do those for very specific reasons. I've done it for people with some gastrointestinal issues, gastroenteritis, inflammation. Maybe we think they have some level of a gallbladder irritation. I've had patients do that as well. They do some fasting, and it helps cool off the intestines. It's called bowel rest. It's been classically used in the surgical arena. When patients have bowel obstruction or they have diverticulitis, it's actually prescribed in conventional medicine. It's called bowel rest. They don't eat anything. You just let your bowel rest, and it puts you into a state of autophagy and helps you cool things off. As far as intermittent fasting goes, I feel like that's become kind of too popular. I don't know if you think, what do you think about that, Kelli? It's gotten too popular. Too many people are doing it. And people say they're intermittent fasting, but they're just doing it for convenience because they're busy in the morning. They don't have time to eat, so they drink coffee and they fast, and it may not necessarily be the best thing for them. Especially me, I don't fast in the morning because I need a lot of protein. I just did a BMR. It says I need 300 grams of protein per day. It's because I train so intensely. I have a caloric requirement of about 3,600 calories a day just resting, and about 4,400 calories when I train, and I train every day. So I don't fast because I need to eat calories and I need to eat proteins. I'm going to wake up and try to eat some eggs and I usually don't eat lunch because I'm busy seeing patients. So the second meal I eat is in the afternoon. So I really only eat twice a day and I undereat, which that's probably why I keep myself so lean, is because I'm actually in a caloric deficit and I train pretty intensely. So I'm not going to intermittent fast. Would be counterintuitive for me.
Yeah, I think it can sometimes help with female hormonal issues, or it can hurt them. So I think it's important to be monitoring symptoms closely with intermittent fasting. And I first would kind of jump towards, can we regulate insulin resistance in other ways?
Yeah.
But I do hear also of people who wake up in the middle of the night from blood sugar dropping. So for him, I would say maybe add a snack right before bed.
Yeah, I think it's maybe more useful for people or maybe a bit more sedentary, but for people who are training, I don't really recommend intermittent fasting or fasting much, because when you train, you actually put yourself into autophagy. So if you want to hit that autophagy, right? So you got to fast for, I think it's 16 hours. Is that right? To be in autophagy? 16 hours.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you got to hit that. And so I know my mom does it. I think her first meal of the day is about 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. And her last meal is about 4 p.m. So she has a decently long area of fasting.
I would also say some women who are a little more sedentary, but they're still moving. They're just maybe not training as intensely and not every day, which for some people that's still totally like a good amount of metabolic benefit. They can tolerate that a little more.
Mhm.
And it's important to break the fast too in a way that's very moderate amount of glycemic index, so a protein and fat rich meal. So that your blood sugar is not immediately spiking after that fast.
I've also encountered this problem where people who fast, they tend to overeat when they break their fast. Have you seen this?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thought, is then people just eat whatever they want in that window, which maybe is not the most helpful.
Yeah. It may be best for someone who eats too much to maybe eat actually smaller meals 3 times a day.
Women, like health experts, will talk about how cortisol blocks fat burn. What are your thoughts on that statement that's kind of vague?
Now, cortisol gets a lot of bad reputation, both in conventional medicine and a functional medicine. I don't think cortisol is the enemy. Cortisol is great. I sometimes will replace cortisol in people because they're low energy and fatigued. We like cortisol. That's why people like doing cold plunges, because it spikes cortisol. That's why we drink coffee every morning, because it spikes cortisol. We love cortisol. The only problem with cortisol is that the anabolics go down, or if there's an imbalance between the androgens or the anabolics and the cortisol, because cortisol is catabolic. So if you have super high cortisol and you have a person with low testosterone, low growth hormone, low DHEA, no estrogen or progesterone if they're postmenopausal, so they have unopposed corticosteroid, cortisol, which what does unopposed corticosteroid do over a long period of time? It eats away the bone, it catabolizes the muscle. So people get the wasting conditions. So I don't think cortisol is the bad person here. What we have to do is we have to make sure it's balanced with androgens and anabolics.
And progesterone, I think.
And progesterone, estrogen.
Or menopausal, really important.
So yeah, it's a common problem. People have too high cortisol sometimes, and they don't have enough androgens to balance it. And yes, they will waste muscle and replace it with fat, and the fat will accumulate. Big problem. Drives the insulin resistance even further.
Yeah, good explanation.
So in my practice, I try to balance the hormones. I don't try to suppress them. And there's Mum. There's our intermittent faster. Well, we we're just talking about you. You do 16 hours fasting.
I was, but then when I misread my true diagnostic results, I started to go. I thought I was having trouble with my blood because I misread the stuff. Actually, my blood is fine, but I did try since then carnivore, and I have to eat at after we get back from the sauna at 9, 10 o'clock at night, or I weigh less the next day. I cannot get in enough food eating grass-fed stew and fish. I'm full, you know. I, I I guess if I skipped coffee time, I might be able to get in one more meal, but I can't. I cannot skip coffee time.
Mom has a rare problem in where that she eats so nutrient dense and everything she eats is for the nutrient properties that it actually is quite satiating and she can't eat enough calories.
I had too, that issue.
You have that
Once I started eating once I started eating more meat, it's like I was already under eating, but I still struggle to not be in a deficit. I feel like I don't track every day, but yeah, the proteins just you feel so full.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I know I don't eat 3,600
I find a
calories.
lot of people too, like they don't always feel their hunger anyways. So, I mean, some people do struggle with cravings and too much hunger, but I also see a lot of people that don't have that issue. So then it really is figuring out kind of a plan of like, okay, this is the minimum amount of what you should eat in the day, and how are we going to measure that? We can't always rely on hunger. Then you add training in too. So there's not a, I mean, it's good to be in a deficit for the most part, a little bit, but I think that's where like the progesterone can sometimes suffer if we're in too much of a deficit. Would you agree?
Oh, yes.
So I really remind myself like, and like I've explained this for clients too, just like think of the first half of your cycle and the second half of your cycle as different. You can't tolerate as much in that second half. You need to eat more. You need to rest more.
Yes, you
So.
burn more calories in the second half. You're more metabolically active. Literally, your temperature goes up a degree or so. There's a lot more burning going on.
Is
More
there a diet that is best to lower anxiety, or what foods would you cut out first? I'm doing other things to help lower anxiety, but really want to focus on the food portion. First thing I say is blood sugar. Keeping that stable will just help with your mood and cravings and energy, and maybe cravings aren't an issue for you, but if they are, so really having that breakfast rich in protein, even if it's like 40, 50 grams, like that seems like a lot, but 30 I would still be happy with for breakfast. And then fatty acids too. Those can help you to absorb vitamins and minerals better that help support your nervous system. So getting in like butter is a good one. If you can do full fat dairy, some people choose not to have dairy for different reasons. Olive oil, avocado, those fats too, coconut oil. Where I start.
That's a good start. Yeah, Mom always says, well, what do you say about poets?
Oh yeah, if you're hanging out at Starbucks having yin things like coffee and sugar, you want to start writing. You feel so emotional and you're deep and you need to write your thoughts out. Whereas if you're more yang and you're eating well, and you don't even think about this reading, writing stuff. Or if you do write concisely and you edit it well and you get your point across and you're done. You don't want to crank out a novel. I saw that the other day on Facebook. Somebody posted, "Oh, I just have to get this out, and I'm feeling so emotional." They wrote without even creating paragraphs. They were just, and I would say very yin. I've done it too. You just feel like you just gotta your artistic thoughts must come out, and so yeah.
It's from eating, you think too much sugar and carbs, and you just get depressed and you want to write these feelings out.
But I totally agree with what I'm sorry, the nutritionist expert.
Yes, Kelli.
Kelli. I totally agree. the fewer carbs, the less emotional, the less I'm reminded about something wrong I said 40 years ago. You're just in the moment more. And so much of philosophy and people go to gurus who try to get you to be in the moment, right? Be in the moment, be present. It has, as Kelli said, it has a lot to do with how many carbs can you leave out. I guess carbs are just there for us to survive. It's great. We are omnivores, but our body and our mind is telling us it's not optimal.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, the carbs are needed to have to create a civilization. So you can have there, you can specialize. Like you saw in the Egyptian society, you had archaeology, you had astronomers, you had surgeons, because they lived on grains, and nobody was hunting any wildlife and spending time on that, so they could split their work up accordingly and specialize and create a high level society.
Yes.
Yeah, and it worked during a famine or something that would kill the cattle because it stayed dry. They could keep it stored. So it worked for civilization.
Interesting. There's another question we have here. Scott said he wakes up frequently in the middle of the night, ravenously hungry. He craves sugar and fatty foods like ice cream. What do you say about that, Kelli?
Answer that. I did say trying to add in a snack before bed with like some fat and protein that will digest more slowly and might prevent him from waking up, and just focusing on eating a little more throughout the day.
Okay.
Hopefully with those cravings, especially if he is pushing his meal till 11 a.m. Sometimes we do need a little bit of carbs early in the day to kind of prevent those cravings later on if we do struggle with that. It's not that we have to be no carbs. I think even like 150 is a good amount for a lot of people. For guys, it can definitely be higher, but yeah, that's my thought there.
If you're doing 150 carbs, what would the carbs be you pick?
Like potatoes, fruit, vegetables, unprocessed. Making sure the grains are like soaked organic if we can, so they're easier to digest. Some beans, I think, can be good for fiber for the gut. So yeah, I think 150 for some people is really hard to hit, and for others it's pretty easy. Like if you've been used to eating low carb for a while. But some people with thyroid issues do need a little more, I've found. So
That's a good point. Is I have recently or over the past couple of years at Iron DPC, I've been noticed that people who do carnivore and keto, they suppress their thyroid function, specifically their T3 level. It goes down on these diets.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have patients who like it and they feel good. It helps their depression, helps their autoimmune symptoms, helps their arthritis, helps their mycotoxin and their mold illness, all sorts of reasons people might go carnivore keto. Helps their diabetes, but yep, T3 goes down. So we may need to replace that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, other things. I mean, sometimes waking up in the middle of the night can also just be related to life stressors and emotional health potentially. If we're just not dealing with our stress right before bed, I think having a good wind down before bed to get yourself into a calm state can sometimes help. But yeah.
That's true. Dad, did that ever happen to you? Did you ever need to wake up in the night to eat food? Because you had a bit of a high cortisol at some point, and it would go up at night. Did you experience any of that?
No, not at all.
No.
And no cravings for food.
Okay.
It was just high cortisol levels.
Mm-hmm. I also think if people are struggling to lower carbs maybe and are just choosing too strict of a plan right away, one thing I'll do is kind of making sure the carbs are with your meal and making sure you're doing that protein first, in the meal, the protein and the fat first. Then if you do the carbs at the end more, they break down a little slower. Like things like some jams or some fruits to get that sweet craving. Because sometimes people can't go from 100% to 0. So we make small changes. That's what I am all about, is small adjustments if we can.
That's good.
That can help. Maybe with the anxiety piece too, of just not being overwhelmed with all of the changes that you need to make, of just focusing on 1 month at a time. What changes can you realistically make? I do a lot of that, of like, why are you not reaching your goals? Maybe they're too much. Maybe you're not tracking them in the right way. Maybe we need a notebook or a spreadsheet where you can realistically see, okay, these are the habits I can actually do in this month. I'm not taking on too much. That's a lot of what I work with people on.
But come to think of it, when I had the glucose monitor on, and they had a couple times where at night the alarm went off because I dropped below the low level. So I wasn't hungry. Others who experience maybe the same thing have a lower glucose level. They might want to eat at that point. So it could be a glucose drop that causing this hunger.
Yeah.
I wonder if that same person would feel really hungry after sauna.
Sauna.
Because doesn't that sauna really get the glucose out? Something about glucose in sauna.
My glucose dropped in the sauna when I wore the CGM.
It's the same thing that Daddy experienced at night.
Both my glucose would drop from sauna, from cryo, from resistance training, but it would go up when I did interval training and playing tennis. So it would, and I don't think it was too significant. It's just how it responded to exercise and these phenomena.
We have HPA members who get really hungry after the plunge. They come out of the plunge and say, I'm starving, I gotta eat.
Really?
Yes.
Well, it could be the low blood sugar that I identified in the cold plunge. I don't know if you identified that too.
I did, but I'm not sure if it could be the instrument too.
Well, then that's similar to that. Say you had some yummy ice cream at 8 o'clock at night before you went to sleep, and then you're in a deep sleep and you drop off that high glucose and you're like, oh, I'm really hungry. I mean, that's maybe what's happening.
Like a good fat source with that. So that kind of slows that and you're not doing a big spike. One question I had, Stefan. So I was thinking about making my own electrolyte drinks, and I've done some of that because a lot of them are kind of expensive. Have you ever purchased like potassium chloride, just isolate? And I feel like potassium is the mineral that's not always in them a lot. There's a lot of sodium usually, but I want more potassium for a lot of people.
Yes. Mom and Dad noticed that recently too. They have high potassium requirements. Yeah. Who was it that was suffering with leg pain?
That was Daddy. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I experienced potassium, and I found it to be very beneficial. And when I had several cramps after working out or just during the day, and also like cramps, muscles from the calves to the chest. I mean the
thoracic area.
There's the thoracic area, that area, and magnesium did not improve. Although I took a bunch of magnesium, took magnesium baths, but when I took potassium, the problem went away. Potassium quite high doses.
Yeah. I find especially not eating maybe as much carbs and you're not getting some of those potassium rich foods. So doing that in a drink can be really helpful. But a lot of the drinks on the market have like 100, 200 milligrams a serving. I want like people to get 500 more. Like we need like 3,000, 4,000 milligrams a day. which is hard to get.
Wow, you're
So-
right. I buy the Element electrolytes. We dispense it at the office. It only has 200 milligrams of potassium.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think the idea behind it is supposed to be a physiologic ratio, right? 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 potassium, 60 magnesium.
I'm not sure. Yeah, exactly what that ratio should be.
But you're right. I don't think it's quite right, specifically if we may have it all wrong in medicine, like how much potassium is actually there. Me and Dad were just talking about this the other day, because when you measure the serum, you're going to see sodium concentration about 140 in the serum, but the potassium you won't see because the potassium is intracellular. So what you detect in the serum is maybe like 4.4 or something. But the potassium that we need is intracellular. So and so it's interesting. We have this ratio in our head of what it should be, but I think you're right in that we actually probably need more potassium than we're consuming. Dad, how many are you taking? 2 grams a day now? What are you up to? 3? Potassium wise?
Almost 2 grams a day.
2 grams. Good.
Yeah. So far, I'm slowly increasing. And Kelly, question: have you found that any compound of potassium was more beneficial than another one? In like potassium potassium chloride,
Citrate.
potassium citrate, and potassium.
There's 2 other types.
Yeah,
lysate.
there's those 3 types that I've seen are all used pretty interchangeably as far as I know. So yeah, I do want to try though. I'm gonna just order the plain potassium chloride and mix it with my salt and some orange juice and water and see how that goes, because I've tried different brands too. I like Elementi, but it's not quite enough potassium.
Right.
And I do add quite a bit of salt, so to my diet.
Hmm.
Just
That's
worth
where a lot
trying.
of I know that use hair testing talk a lot about that, and will measure the ratios in the hair and see how those change. But I just find most people aren't eating a lot of minerals anyways, so let's just start by getting some more in.
Yeah, that's good.
My current fad right now is spirulina. What do you think about spirulina, Kelly?
What? I've heard of it. Is it what is it again?
No, idea.
Pond scum.
No.
The pasta? Or
Oh, it is. It is from ponds. Yeah, it's the green stuff in ponds.
it's a greens powder. Is that what it is?
Spirulina is a one-celled algae that grows in ponds.
Right. Okay.
A YouTube video of make it.
I don't know too much about
Why?
Yeah. I don't know too much about it.
Who told you that?
It's supposed to have some minerals and B12 and
Yeah.
Aztec warriors ate it as cake. So I'm trying it out right
Yeah. I don't do a lot of superfoods myself, but I know there's a lot of good ones. I mean, and with the adaptogens, I don't do too much with those, or herbs even. It's kind of out of my scope.
You're more about the optimal diet, right?
Well, more so in the vitamins, micronutrient therapies. But
And
not a certification where I'm learning more of the functional medicine. So I'm sure I'll learn more of them, but
so have you been you probably already said this before we came on, but when you're trying to heal people, have you been recommending more a plant diet or a carnivore diet or a keto? What seems to be where, I mean, these things change, but what do you
I don't recommend a plant-based diet. If people come to me and they're eating that way and they want to, then that's, their decision, and I try to help them with that. But I share about my experience of going from more plant-based to animal-based and how that helped improve my cycles and my skin and lots of things. So yeah, like I said, I kind of stick with more of that moderate approach to carbs, just because I live in Iowa, where, not saying people don't love carbs everywhere, but I would say we have a lot of corn and potatoes here, so we're not going to cut all of them out. That's okay.
Corn and
Did
potato.
we answer your question, Scott?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Did we answer your question?
Okay,
Please.
so I had a conference going on before, and I don't want to double ask any questions. I'm hoping this gets released as a video that I
Okay.
can post later
yeah.
on.
We release it much.
But the one question I just wanted to follow up, if I can double ask it, in terms of carbs, if you're training pretty consistently, regular potatoes versus sweet potatoes, but rice more as a carb, that shows up a bit more because we cook a lot in our house. Like, what are your feelings on that in general? Is it stay away from it? Okay to approach it?
I mean, it's definitely okay to have in moderation. All of the types of rice, besides like I think it's called black wild rice, are pretty higher on that glycemic index, just meaning they will spike your blood sugar a little bit more than that kind of wild rice. But if you're gonna have it with a meal, and if you can track your carbs a little bit, maybe, totally fine.
Okay.
Especially after a workout too. Are you doing like or strength training or?
Yeah, about 5 days a week with weight work for pretty intensely, 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I'm trying to work like more of a HIIT workout in once or twice per week as well. But
Has your weight been stable or changing, or what's going on
my
with that?
weight has been relatively stable, but my weekends I've been definitely undisciplined. So actually my wife and I just went back to the drawing board, re-grocery shopped, filled up the whole house, and we're a bit more back on track with that right now. So we'll see over the next month. They'll tell the tale.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Sounds like you have a lot of plans in place. So definitely eat your rice.
Okay. All right. And then I had another question. I'm sorry to cut anybody off. In terms of caffeine, I'm not a big coffee drinker. I wish that I was, because everybody seems to enjoy it so much. I was listening to Stefan's mom talk about that before, right? So I take a caffeine like supplement from bulk supplements, 200 milligrams every morning. It makes a major difference with my ability to like mentally focus and fire with my lectures early in the morning for the class that I teach. It's like night and day. But I'm not interested in having my heart explode if I'm taking too much. I don't know if the dosage is okay, if that's kind of like normal if you're a coffee drinker.
The 200 milligrams?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's totally fine.
Okay.
Are you eating breakfast?
No,
Or are you
no.
still kind of on the fence about when you want to eat your breakfast?
Right. But what you said before made a lot of sense, meaning if I go nutrients first and then worry about the intermittent fasting, what I notice is if I get the nutrients in, that I don't wake up like a monster in the middle of the night looking to eat ice cream. It's almost like there's a magic set point where if I hit the right number of calories, and especially the right number or the right amount of protein during the day, then I'm like, I can sleep through the night, no problem. But I have a hard time hitting the nutrients if I start to eat like at 11, because that's usually like my first break when I'm teaching. But I can go ahead and I can eat at 6:30 when I wake up in the morning, have a couple eggs, and then roll into there.
Do you drink something at like 8?
I do. I drink it like a half an hour. Oh, I'm sorry. What's that?
Sometimes I'll do like a collagen drink where it's like the powdered collagen with. If you're not a coffee drinker, that's okay. But you could do like that and coconut oil I mean, it's not maybe the best breakfast for most people, but like it would be a substitute if you didn't get a full meal and you wanted some protein, fat, which but
Okay, that's fine. And I think I posted something before, but I wasn't sure if it got responded to or if I was offline. What's your all's take on like a protein shake to like fit a meal replacement in at a certain point, whether it's breakfast, I don't know, before bed or whatnot? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's what your thoughts are there.
Can I answer this one?
I do drink a whey protein. It's because I don't hit my protein requirements throughout the day, so I'll drink that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I like doing smoothies sometimes. It's finding the protein powders that are pretty basic ingredients, like a collagen, whey, casein, gelatin, those ones. But yeah, and that can be a time to get in some of those fiber-rich berries, milk.
And it doesn't matter in terms of meal timing with the protein shake. If I wake up in the morning, that would be the ideal thing, is to drink that on the
For
go.
me, that's a breakfast I do pretty often.
Okay.
'Cause it's quick. You could bring it on your way to work. I mean, it's ideally we want to eat our meals when we're not busy moving, driving.
Yeah.
So our body can sit and digest it. But yeah,
All right. I'm going to start that tomorrow then. That's
make
good.
sure you have the protein and the fat in there. I think you
Yeah.
know that it's not just all fruit.
Yeah. Okay. Got that. That's fine. All right. That's good. Thank you so much.
I have one comment regarding that. The concern of when you have rice, for example, for carbs, that you don't want to raise your glycemic index much. There's a study I just read recently that if you cook the rice, let it cool in the refrigerator, refrigerate it overnight, and then eat that rice, the glycemic effect is quite reduced. I don't recall the exact number, but it is
Yeah,
40% reduced.
preparation can matter. It's
Worth
just learning.
trying out if it works.
Because it's you eat less, I'll bet. It's so
No,
good
no,
with-
it's different. It's different. The way you even cooking it, like it, for example, cooked oats versus raw oats, the glycemic effect is very different.
Yeah. Wait, is it better with cooked?
It
Than
no,
raw?
it's worse. When you cook it, the glycemic spike is much higher when you cook.
Oh, I didn't know that. I do oats in my smoothie sometimes.
That would be
Which
raw then, right?
Yeah, well, and Weston A. Price talks a lot about soaking grains and beans for digestibility, which I
Yeah,
don't
you
know.
probably can't digest it if it's not cooked. That's why it's not spiking your glycemic index.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I
Go right through you.
think that's probably true.
The mail.
Hmm.
Well, mom and dad are experts in soaking. I mean, they were soaking for years. They soaked everything. You name it, they soaked it.
And I don't know if we were experts.
Right.
You always
What about
over soak
canned
it. Get
Do you-
sour.
Anybody know for canned beans, do you just avoid them, or if you get those, would you soak those and then eat them?
Yeah, they don't taste the same. Canned beans, they're all mushy.
Yeah, definitely different. But I've used canned chickpeas and black beans for recipes, and like, do they digest the same? Do you need to soak those? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. They're so mushy. I would think they would digest quite differently compared to who knows how they do the candy preps.
I'll do that soups where it's like in a crock pot overnight, but it's kind of the only time I've done. I mean, there
Yeah,
is definitely
we'll do it
ideal
too.
plants who like beans, but most people don't. I find most people do not want to eat beans, which is fine.
Yeah.
Do you, Stefan, do you see with people eating carnivore, do you see constipation, digestive issues
Yeah. They might get some diarrhea.
right away or frequently?
Usually happens about day 2.
Do you
I
have a lot of clients following that?
They're just eating too much fat, I think.
Right.
I had the opposite problem doing this all carnivore recently. The stool was a little too yang, as it were, a little too dark. I was not constipated though, but it seems like I should add some more vegetables in there. So sometimes now I'm throwing in some bok choy, and it's great when someone makes the stew that already has some carrots in there. I think that's better than, I'm just pure carnivore. It's different. It's really different.
Mom's just casually throwing out the yin yang principles of food. Like everyone knows what she's talking about.
Most people know.
No, no one knows this stuff, Mom. This is archaic knowledge. No one knows.
Diarrhea is yin. Dark stool would be yang. Dark and hard.
Constipation is yang. Name some yang foods. What's a yang food?
It's Chinese ones.
Yang salt.
So
Hard, anything baked and hard, and so a rice pudding would be yinner than you use rice flour in a cookie. That would be yang. So you change the nature of the same item.
yeah. And the type of animal matters. Like typically animals would be yang. Like you eat the bison, you eat the beef, that's yang, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yes.
And you can
Depends on
always
how you
change,
cook it.
you can always, exactly, and by cooking, by processing, you can change the quality. Like even if you have nori, which is a seaweed, you can just roast it and make it much more yang doing that, or and vice versa. You can, if you chill something, you chill fruit is already on the inside, you chill it.
So
and
if
you
somebody
make it more yin.
if somebody has diarrhea, you could go burn some nori over the stove, and they could chew on that, and that would help. That would make their condition more yin, and that would help
It balances it out
balance it out.
and fixes the condition.
Doesn't really fix it, but it would kind of, I mean, be whatever caused the yin condition, you need to cut that out, but it would help.
Yeah, it's all about the balance. You can't be too yin with the foods. You'll get the yin energy, the downward energy, right? So this would be vomiting, this would be diarrhea, right?
Upward energy is yin.
Upward energy is yin? Okay.
Yeah, when you're vomiting, when Belle was little, sometimes she wouldn't eat breakfast, and she would suddenly get nauseous. And so I would run to Wendy's and buy these horrible yang fried French fries. Fixed her up. We found that out once when she was a child. Those extremely salty yang hard cooked French fries would give her such a downward energy, probably especially because she wasn't used to it. That would stop any upward energy immediately. She was cured.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. If your child was eating Cheerios all day, which are just yang little hard things, that probably wouldn't have the same effect though, because the child is in such an odd state from eating something like Cheerios. That
Too much sugar. That's yin though. Sugar is a yin.
yeah, but that's not gonna. Well, yeah. So you got these two extremes going on with Cheerios. It's got sugar in there, but it's this hard baked item. So you've just got these two extremes going. So it's kind of hard to balance. But it does give people sort of a satisfied feeling, probably the yin and the yang of it. The yin and the yang, when you eat those French fries at Wendy's, that are so yang, you want the yin soda to go with it. And then you feel all balanced, but it's chaotic. But it feels good at the moment.
And the McDonald's understands the yin yang then.
Yeah, you get your yin yang at McDonald's. Yeah.
Okay. That's how they sell it.
Yeah, I cut out all Diet Coke after your wedding, and I absolutely don't crave it at all because I've cut out. I'm eating just at home really well. And the last time I desired some Diet Coke, Belle had ordered one of your tennis events, a turkey wrap, and I took a bite of it, and it was just so many. I don't know, the chemical salts in there, and it was just screaming out for a soda. I resisted.
Good. Very good. Yeah, I don't think we have any more questions. Call it a night.
With Nicole to see if she had more questions on that.
Yeah, looks like that's it.
And what are your thoughts on food tracking? Do you recommend an app, or how do you approach that?
No, I haven't found any particular app. Do you like any?
I mean, I use photo tracking for some people. I mean, Chronometer is a good one, or I use my fitness. The app I use for personal training has an option to track, but I pay for that one, so it's not like one that people would use on their own, really. But
Probably the
yeah,
best we've
think
found.
for some people, calorie tracking is really helpful at first to see like where their calories and proteins and all of that are at. But also it can be overwhelming. So sometimes I like to just take photos and then we talk about those to have some of that still accountability and talking through things. But
I like that. So photos, that's a good way to identify how much they're eating.
yeah, because I can follow it too. I mean, but I want them to know too, like what I'm looking for.
Kelli, do you have an opinion on? I was wondering, when you have the coffee and it has that caffeine in it, sometimes you hear that that will interfere with absorption of vitamins. So, and
Right.
then I was like, if I'm taking it with milk, does the caffeine stay in the stomach a long time? How long until you can eat your meat and absorb the iron in there if you've had caffeine? Any
I
opinion?
definitely, I don't have an exact like hours for that. I would think like if you really wanted to absorb iron really well from meat, I would definitely spread out your coffee and tea like 3-4 hours away. But yeah, the way I've learned it from one of my mentors is really like all of our nutrients and foods are interacting all the time. So just eat, don't overthink it too much. But then if you do testing and you find you have some issues with certain nutrients, then you might need to take certain supplements at specific times and that can get kind of complicated. But
Yeah, I
definitely.
started taking all my vitamins now at night because I think the coffee's binding up a lot of my vitamins.
Yeah, I would say coffee and tea are inhibitors that are pretty common. And another one a lot of people know, and I definitely recommended this a lot when I work with kids, is like vitamin C helps with iron absorption. So have some fruit with your beans or with your, especially if it's plant iron for people who don't. You absorb the animal iron pretty well. But yeah. And calcium interacts with iron too. So
That's
we have
true. I know I've recommended it before with guys with hemochromatosis. I mean, they accumulate too much iron in their blood. I advise them to actually drink a green tea with their steak because the black tea and the green tea, the caffeine will bind to the iron, and so they won't accumulate so much hemochromatosis issue.
do have too much iron. Or they don't utilize it well because they're missing different cofactors. Yeah.
Oh yeah. When I had misread the results, and I thought there was, I thought my red blood cells had big and little widths. I thought I had a bad RDW, so I googled that, and Google said walnuts could stop iron absorption, and I was eating walnuts after my meat meal in the morning or my fish meal in the morning. So, well, it turns out my blood cells don't have the wrong widths, but I cut out the walnuts because I don't want them interfering with absorption. Any comments on that about nuts and meat and
Nuts, yes. What do you think?
I have mixed feelings on nuts, the polyunsaturated fats. I hear some dietitians saying, okay, those are kind of inflammatory. Some people love them. I mean, I've always been a fan of eating nuts, and I still eat almond butter and stuff. So I just think it's kind of everything in moderation. But I think like a lot of holistic health people really demonize dairy. Some of the more functional people are demonizing nuts. I think just all can fit, but
it's great to get you eat some walnuts and you want calories from them. You tend
I like
to eat
that.
a lot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's that paradox. Like some people do need more calories, so then why not eat more nuts? They're low in sugars. They're pretty unprocessed, but
It happened to Dad though once. Where Dad was sitting at his computer desk doing engineering all day. He's eating pistachios, and he's like, "I don't know why I'm not hungry." I was like, "Dad, you ate 2,000 calories worth of pistachios."
that would do it. My dad does that too.
Yeah, they're really yummy.
Yeah, I would say I've heard kind of using them as a condiment is a good idea. And Nicole asked about best products or foods for pre and probiotics, because I mentioned that gut health is important for anxiety as well. So prebiotics, different than probiotics. They're the foods that feed your gut bacteria. So that is where fruits, vegetables, not all of them have a lot of probiotics, but some of them like apple, banana, berries do. Onions and garlic also have a lot of prebiotics. So I don't necessarily like say eat a whole ton of those, but making sure you're getting some of those in, or you could do a supplement like AG1 has that in there. You can buy just like psyllium powder is a really cheap one.
True.
And add that to a smoothie.
We like fermented vegetables, right? Sauerkraut, kimchi.
Right, and then that's going to be the probiotics when they're fermented, or if you do like kefir, that's one I add in smoothies, or just buying a product. But But yeah, I don't do a lot of GI maps to really test people's gut yet. I think I'll maybe get more into that, but it's such an expensive test that I don't jump to that. I would rather just
Mm-hmm. Just
Yeah.
try to fix it.
I think, Kelly, that there would be just a ginormous difference between, say, as Stefan said, fermented vegetables, sauerkraut, and those jars of incredibly sweet probiotics they have at Publix. One ate and grew on cabbage, and the other one needed sugar to grow on. So you would think your guts would be trained or would grow the wrong type. You'd be moving the wrong people into the neighborhood, eating the wrong probiotics.
I only recommend certain strains of probiotics from companies that I trust.
I mean, some people trust the ones that grow in sugar, and I'm just thinking that's a bad idea. That tough thing should be able to eat fiber from cabbage.
There's only two companies I use. I use Megaspore and I use Pendulum's Acromancia, and they're very well researched companies, and they have very good results.
yeah. Also seen microbiome labs recently.
Yeah, Megaspore Microbiome Labs. Yeah,
Didn't know that.
yeah, they're excellent. Top product. Yeah, the Pendulum created this probiotic. They're the first company to synthesize Akkermansia. Akkermansia is an anaerobic microbe that previously was unable to put it into a capsule because it would die exposed to air. It's an anaerobe. But Pendulum figured out a way to get us this thing that everybody's missing in their gut because no one eats fermented vegetables, and it's really only found in people who eat fermented vegetables. So we can give them back the Akkermansia in this probiotic, and I tell them to eat the fermented vegetables so that they can feed this probiotic themselves and generate their own. And this thing is amazing. It seems to improve people's glucose tolerance and helps them lose weight, has all these benefits for the brain and the immune system. And yeah, fermented vegetables.
Stefan, when you talk about fermented vegetables, like what's a typical serving size?
I went through a whole jar of these pickles that we fermented ourselves today. I mean,
Today?
Yeah.
All right.
Logan fermented them and I ate them.
Yeah, sauerkraut's the only one I've made. What do you have pickles?
Oh yeah, I sometimes I'll kill a whole jar of kimchi, like a fresh kimchi that we fermented. It's so good.
Yeah, that is good.
But I usually try to eat it with every meal, specifically when I eat it with meats, because the enzymes in these live cultures, they help you digest the meats as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think, especially at the end of the day, that would be great because a lot of people are, myself included, like maybe you didn't eat a big lunch or you skipped or you did, but then your dinner, you might just be kind of stressed. Like end of the day, you're tired, your body's not in that rest and digest state. So it could use some extra support, especially if that is a bigger meal maybe. So I'll sometimes do like digestive bitters or enzymes I've tried, but I like the fermented vegetable idea a lot. Yeah.
Tasty too.
I love that kimchi.
Yeah. You make it?
I want one. I haven't tried to.
Okay. You can follow the recipe on our website. It's not hard.
But those aren't necessarily fermented. I don't think. They're just in vinegar.
The ones at the stores?
I make the pickled onions just with white vinegar.
Uh-huh.
Water, but not fermented.
Very good. We're gonna close it out here. We've been here an hour, so will everybody get back to what they were doing?
Yeah.
We'll upload this channel on Monday.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the help. Thank you.
Bye guys. Good chatting.
All right, bye.